have a question. He does.
You were stroking your beard. That is a sign.
Yeah.
Question. I think
Question.
In your travels, is anybody special you met when you went out to your cosplay expos, things like that?
Special.
Somebody you were really excited about meeting?
I honestly, like, I'm always crazy flattered when someone says, and this is not me hair flipping, but when someone's like, oh, you've inspired me to cosplay, because when I started, and she's heard this story, a lot of people heard this story. When I started in like '99, it was still like not very well known. Well, when I started, I didn't even know what it was. I was just really getting into anime. I was like, I really want to dress up as this character for Halloween. And a year later, I went to my first con. I'm like, holy, other people did this. I didn't invent it.
Totally did.
And I thought it was just the coolest thing. And I didn't, back then, there was no such thing as cosplay guests. There was no such thing as celebrities. It was like you had to wait 5 months to get a wig. If you were in Canada, you might not even get your wig, and it's like customs.
Now there's Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
You get it in 2 days.
Everything was satin and broadcloth. There was no warm blood. There was no, Sintra. People didn't use any of these techniques. So, I was really awful for many, many, many years, and I'm still learning. And to see people come out and their first costumes just like mind-blowing, and they're like, you've inspired me. I was like, wow, I really need to step up my game.
Yeah. I feel
This is so much better than like what I'm making right now. So I find that very humbling and very sweet, and to me that's, and not to sound cheesy, but that is special. To me, it's not like a specific person. It's pretty much everybody who's like, oh, I follow you. I like your squirrels, or they keep up with more than just the costumes. They actually know me as a person, and they're like, oh yeah, you hate pineapple. I hate pineapple too.
I totally agree with that. I think that, and it's usually something along those lines, like some personal story at every place we get to go to. And for me, I feel the exact same way. I never thought I would do anything in my life that anyone would come up to me and say, you've inspired me, or you've given me courage, and that like melts my heart. It sounds really cheesy, but that is a really important thing to me, to be able to inspire someone else and get someone to step out of their shell. Because there was people that I looked up to that did that for me, so to be able to kind of return the favor and do that for someone else is really special.
Because when I talked to a lot of cosplayers, like in high school, when I started, I was super shy, super awkward. I'd be in the science room playing like D&D, and I was just getting anime, and I was like, wow, the girl in the anime is so sexy and so funny, and everybody likes her. I wonder what it's like to be her. And that's why I dressed up as her for Halloween, because I was like, I wonder if I could feel, like I was really young, but I would transform into this person. And even if you don't, each time you wear a costume, you almost sort of like take on, you get more confident, you can put yourself out there. You're almost like wearing armor, but it allows you to be more outgoing. I would say like a lot of us in this society are like kind of awkward, or problems communicating, or really shy. The moment you talk to somebody about something they're passionate about, and if they spend like 30, 40, 100 hours making something, they're passionate about it. The moment you start talking to that person, they will completely open up, and they will come out of their shell, and they'll be like, well, it feels really good to talk to somebody about what I like, and then it'll pile on top of one another, another. Eventually they will, like I do have, I'm still shy, and I still have self-esteem issues, like everybody, but I'm way more confident than I used to be when I was a kid. And by the way, I always give you a warning, I always zone in on one person when I'm talking, because right now it's you. That's why I'm staring at you intently. Yeah, so that's it.
Yes.
You can take one cosplayer out to lunch and ask them.
Leanna.
Oh,
That's only one? And ask them anything. Have you heard this question before? Well, of course, Ricky.
okay, well, I wouldn't take her out.
She's like,
You can't ask anybody here.
oh, you can't ask someone here?
I would take Kristen out, we talk about farts.
You do that out anyway.
So it feels natural.
I would take
of course.
but I don't think we talk about farts. She would
You
probably.
guys are classy.
Just a little bit. Not really that much. We've had these fart conversations before often.
Does anyone else have any questions that they want to ask?
Back in the day, back then it was fall costumes rather than masquerade.
Yeah.
I did a lot of fall costumes, and when you were referring to taking on a persona, I went to, the minute I found out where this thing was used on a particular TV show, I ordered it from them and got what they
Like
use on
the
the show.
exact-
Yeah, that's a whole other aspect of
Yeah.
cosplay that I really find fascinating. It's like for instance, okay, on the Rocketeer, there's a belt buckle that he wears, and it's an actual item. That item now goes on eBay for $400 because
Really?
people are. It's the buckle he wears with the rocket
Oh.
pack because people want
The
that
thing,
exact
that
buckle,
thing, yeah.
and it's an actual like piece of hardware. So yeah, I mean, you'll get people that it's like that perfect bolt of fabric from Doctor Who,
Yeah.
or sometimes you'll even get remnants from movies. Like the company who made the outfit will be like, oh, we have a remnant, and they'll start selling it off, and people are like,
Yeah, I have a whole appreciation for that, because there's some people, like for me, when I make costumes, it's always my take on a certain character. I'm not necessarily like making it exact, but for people like you that will like find every little piece, that's applause for
Yeah,
that. 'Cause
seriously, that's
that's
all I
dedication.
In fact, if I'm up to it tomorrow, I'll be wearing it.
what is it? Now you gotta tell us.
Yeah.
It's Richard Council.
Oh, very nice. But yeah, it's
Oh wait, we had another
I call it
question over
comic book reenacting. I had to explain that to somebody. They're like, what is this? It was like I was like at like some medical thing, military thing, and I was looking at stuff, and they're like, so what is this for? And I'm like, how do I describe this?
That's a good way to put
And
it.
I was like, I'm a comic book reenactor.
That's actually
And
a
they were
really
like,
good way
I'm
to
a
put it.
Civil War reenactor. I know what you're talking about. I'm like, yes, I reenacted, and then
Yeah.
something.
That's a really good way to put it, because when people ask you and they come to you, they're like, what do you do? And then you sit and try to explain what you do, and as you're explaining, you're like, this sounds really silly.
Yeah.
Like, this sounds like I'm just a giant child, which I am.
Oh,
but-
well, like a long time ago, you'd be like, oh, I dress up as like comic characters, and they'd be like, is that a sexual?
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand it. And I'm like,
you?
maybe for some people, I don't know, but not for me.
I actually bumped into some mean girls from high school on the street the other day. And one girl hasn't been on Facebook or whatever, so she had no idea what I was doing. The other one did. And she's like, oh, what are you doing these days? I'm like, oh, I'm a professional cosplayer. And the other girl was like, oh, well, what's that? And the other one was like, oh, it's this really weird thing that people do. It's really weird. Yeah. And then I like tried to explain it, but she already put this like negative
Yeah.
light.
Never
And I
mind.
was like, well.
But so many more people appreciate it now.
So
It's
many
like,
more people,
definitely.
yeah.
I think the term cosplay has become a commonly used term. Whereas before, cosplay's been around forever. I remember the old like Star Trek and Star Wars conventions, like in the 70s, that my parents, would tell us about or take us to. And now, it was just costuming. It's been happening forever, but now the term has become popular and more people know about it.
oh, you're
Yeah, you.
Wait, we had a question over here before. Yes.
So whenever y'all go to different Comic-Cons, what all y'all bring with y'all to keep from getting like really uncomfortable?
Don't make an uncomfortable costume.
Yeah.
uncomfortable is like the bottom of my list.
Yeah.
I was like, do I look good?
Yeah. Does it hurt? Yeah, but
Yeah.
you're just gonna deal
You
with it.
gotta suck it up, but I mean, it's things like wear insoles.
Yeah, Dr. Scholl's for sure.
Bring band-aids with you.
Yeah. Deodorant. I'm really hyper aware of like getting sweaty, so
Yeah.
I'll always like have perfume or.
Or even the right undergarments, like the right bra and underwear. I know
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like people don't want to talk about it, but you
Yeah,
have
but
to bring it.
wear a costume before you go to
Test
the con
runs.
for
Test
like
runs
20
for sure.
minutes, and if you're like, or like someone was a friend of mine. I was at a con and she put her contacts in. And I was like, are those uncomfortable? She's like, yes. I'm like, it's only gonna get worse, so take them out.
Yeah.
Like if it hurts when you put them in,
It's not gonna get
it's not gonna get better. It's not gonna be so like,
Yeah.
oh, these feel amazing.
And test runs for sure.
Yeah.
I would like if you can do it for like an hour, but actually move.
Yeah,
Because
sit,
for me,
walk upstairs.
exactly, do things you would do. I'll put something. I'm terrible. I actually will make something, and I don't put the whole thing on until I get to the show.
No, I do that too because you
all
want to be
the time.
surprised. You want to like, I'm ready.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh wow, that's not gonna work at all. So definitely, if you're able to do a test run, walk around with it, like Rudy said, sit, stand, walk upstairs. Try to like pick stuff up if you draw something on the floor, seeing what your capabilities are in the costume ahead of time, so you don't show up and then are completely miserable and can't do anything about it.
Yeah, you have to be able to live in the costume, as you would as a character.
Right.
I mean, I've been male and female characters, obviously, when I'm doing tomorrow will be male. You have to be able to learn, can you sit in it?
Right.
Can you be
What
comfortable
your
in it?
limitations
Because
are.
normally, if you are the character, that's their normal clothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm totally guilty of not doing that. I remember when I did Black Hat first.
had to like
Yeah,
lift
I
you
was
up
like,
to the
you know, I had
location.
sculpted these claws, and I was like, I couldn't use my phone, I couldn't go to the bathroom without help, and so
But you looked awesome.
I didn't feel awesome.
And that's the main
And that's
thing. You
the
need to
thing
feel
too,
awesome.
Yeah, like that's the thing about cosplay. You need to feel like you're at your best because I feel like I can't read. Because it'll totally read on your face. Like I can fake it, but
For only so long.
yeah, after a certain time, you're just like you'll look miserable, and then your photos will look miserable, and then you'll get really down on yourself, and that's not what cosplay is.
Right.
Cosplay, yes, it is a daunting task. It is going to be frustrating. You may have late nights, but when you're wearing it, it needs to be awesome. It needs to be like the best relationship you've ever been in. You need to
Well,
be
that's the payoff, you
Yeah.
know? And the thing is, too, to remember, if you aren't feeling good and you're in it for 2 hours and you're like, oh my god, I'm just done. Be done.
Yeah, be done.
Just take it off and be done. There's always another con, there's always another day. Don't make yourself miserable because it's like you're saying, it's not fun. And the whole purpose of this thing, like for me, people ask, how do you cosplay? What's the right way to do it? And there is no right or wrong way, but my words of advice are, if you're having fun, you're doing it right. And if you're not having fun, you might as well just take it off, enjoy the rest of the con, and try again the
And
next day.
she's talking about when you're wearing it. If you're making it,
Oh yeah, that's gonna
I've
suck.
been doing it wrong for a long
Yeah.
time because there's many times late at night where I'm like, this is not fun.
Yeah.
I was like, this pattern, this thing's not sewing together. I have to go buy more fabric. I'm out of this. You know, I burned that.
So that's like the miserable part,
Yeah.
and then the payoff is when it's done.
Totally. I say
Yeah.
it's like a relationship. You know, while you're making it, you're like, I hate you. I love you. I love you.
And then when it starts becoming something,
Then you love it.
love is a glove. You're like, okay, I love you now. I hated
Yeah.
you like for 5 days,
Yeah.
but now I love you.
It's totally like, and then you forget about all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
I'm in you.
It's not that kind of panel.
Oh, wait. Oh, I just got that. Sorry.
All right, moving
It
on.
was a
Next
storm last
question.
night. The beds were really hard, and I didn't
Yeah.
get much sleep. Yes.
Going back to something you mentioned earlier, what's your response, or how do you feel about people who go like gnash their teeth and say it's called costuming, or it's costumes, not cosplay, get it right? What's your response to that?
I just say they've got too much time on their
Yeah.
hands to be worried about that.
Again, it's supposed to be fun, and the thing is, no matter what you do, there's always going to be someone that isn't happy or you don't please. Can't please everyone. So the thing is, do what you want to do, be happy, have fun, please yourself, and anyone else that's grumpy and cranky and says you say the word wrong, screw them.
I mean, technically, getting down to the nitty gritty, cosplay is a verb. Like, cosplay is the act of putting on the costume. Costuming is probably making the costume. Like, they're not saying, like, I'm a film cosplayer. They're like, I'm a film costumer. Because you're making the costumes the actors are wearing.
Yeah.
But I call it cosplay. I know a lot of people, like, especially in the comic book community for years, were like, ugh, Japanese. It's dirty. What a dirty word. It makes me think of naughty things. I was like, get over yourself. You're dressing up as a fictional character. Like, let's simmer down here.
Yeah, I think that's
Don't take it so seriously.
when you take a step back and actually look at what it is that we're doing,
Yeah.
settle down. You know, it's kind of, there's always going to be those people that are like, no, it's this, and this, but you can't fight every battle. Just pick and choose what's important to you and enjoy yourself. And hi to my 501st peeps in the back that just came in.
There you go.
Yes.
What is the hardest part of cosplay?
There's so many
I
different.
know.
First thing that popped in my head was negative responses.
I don't get too many. I think that's where I'm fortunate. I don't get that many, so I think the hardest thing for me is knowing when to be like, it's not perfect, or
Yeah, when to like, this is good enough, because you can always
yeah,
continue to fix things.
like I constantly like I can do better. This could be better.
Yeah.
And there just gets to a point where it's like the law of diminishing returns, where you either like need to just start over again with what you know, or just move to the next costume. Be like, okay, this was a learning. Let's go to the next costume. There's that. There's also holding it. That's extremely difficult. Cosplays holding it.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, it's totally true. You have to think ahead when making something on how are you going to be able to live like a normal human for a
Yeah, I've just learned to shut down all bodily functions.
Yeah, we don't need to drink a lot for everything. I think for me is like dealing with the frustration. Sometimes I don't always have a whole lot of time. There's a few days in between a con. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make this new costume, and I have 2.5 days, and it's super unrealistic. just kind of keeping up the motivation to do stuff and not get so frustrated. And there's been times where I've just been like, okay, you know what, it's not gonna happen, I've done, and I've learned my limit on just putting it to the side and realizing it's not gonna be done for this con, and if I rush it, it's just gonna be, I'm not gonna be happy with it. So just learning to just put something aside and come back to it when I feel better about it.
Yeah, and it's that whole thing about feeling good about yourself. So like I always say, take the time to create something you're proud of, because, and then this goes back to the haters. If you create something you're proud of, it doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, people can say crappy things, but you know, you can be like, you know what, I'm proud of this, and you can't take that away from me. But if you put something out you're not proud of, and then someone says something, and they be like, you know what, right.
You start believing it, right? Yeah.
And then you just start tearing yourself down, and then you don't feel good, and then when you wear the costume, you don't feel good. So it's this whole thing where just create stuff you're proud of and take your time. I totally understand what she's saying. Like I struggle with costumes all the time, and I see people just whipping things out, and I'm like, why am I not faster? You know, I should know this. And you can't be comparing yourself to other people, because you will just drive yourself crazy. Yeah. Like you will literally, you can use them as inspiration. Be like, wow, what they're doing is really inspiring. I want to be able to be as good as that, or I hope someday be as good as that. Don't put yourself, don't raise them up by putting yourself down. Don't make them, they're like, they're so much more amazing than me, I will never be that good, and why am I such a failure? Like, don't ever do that. Does that make sense? Okay.
You talk about budgeting and how your budget.
I'm the wrong person to talk about budgeting.
Riddle's wrong person.
I try.
Coupons, Joanne's
Yeah.
has an app with coupons. I go to Goodwill a lot. I buy all my leather at Goodwill because it looks weathered and distressed. I'll go to Walmart and make like a superhero suit, buy like an extra large men's shirt, and use like the cool techie fabric from that. Yeah, I mean there's kind of this point though, if you start using cheap materials,
It's not real. It's gonna be.
yeah,
You
it's
get what
gonna
you pay
fall.
for.
Yeah,
It's
it's
gonna
gonna
fall
fall apart.
Yeah.
Like if you're like, I'm gonna make this out of cardboard instead of using like something better. But
Yeah.
then you also get to the point where you're like, do you know how to use that better item properly? I saw someone do. They used Warbla. I want to say I can't remember what it was for, but it was very. There were like 5 other materials they could have used, which would have been cheaper, lighter, faster, and probably would have looked more like what they wanted. So just because something seems like the right material, make sure you do the research that you're actually using it properly.
Well, I think like the popularity of like Warbla has become a very.
It's not the magical.
It's not the magical tool that everyone says. It's great for certain things, but like you're saying, it's very expensive for a sheet. It's like $100, right, for the big sheet.
Depends on
Yeah.
the size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of money when you could use something else, and I mean, and just knowing the
Right
materials
tool
and
for the job.
exactly. For me, I try to budget. The thing that gets expensive is like you can budget on the costume, and then you have to do wigs and shoes and anything leather, belts or accessories, and that's kind of where I always I'm like, okay, never mind.
And
I
then
tried.
incidentals like makeup.
Oh yeah.
Good. You want to invest in good makeup.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be in it all day, and your skin will be like, WTF? What are you doing to me?
Yeah.
Using makeup.
There's an app, isn't there an app that you can use that like tracks all of your stuff?
Oh yeah,
personally-
Cosplanner
Oh
is a
yeah.
great app.
I don't use it because I don't want to know.
Well, I just use it. I use it because I put all my photos in one area, so if I need to draw
Yeah.
a reference. But yeah, I mean, if you plan your costumes in advance, and you're going to like New York, like I don't go to New York or LA that often, but when I do, I'm like, okay, I have my next year costume
Garment
display.
district, yeah.
So,
Or if you've heard of muslin, you study fashion design.
yeah, he says on my mock-ups.
Yeah, do a mock-up first if you have time.
Always. No.
Yeah.
Always do a mock-up. Make the time, because nothing will be worse than you spending $30 on a piece of fabric and you just mess it up. Like
The first round, yeah.
yeah, she's totally right. Like I cannot recommend muslin mock-ups or something equivalent to the stretch that you're going to use for your final product. If you're doing a spandex bodysuit, muslin is not going to work for you. You should find comparable, cheaper spandex. Some people buy bed sheets actually too, if they don't want to buy muslin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also muslin is great too, because sometimes you can line your stuff with it. If it's say a little see-through or a little not, if it's a little flimsy, just then rip apart your mock-up and then just
I repurpose shoes a lot. If you're gonna have covers or anything over them, finding things that will work with multiple costumes is always really helpful. Most people are never gonna notice. The only thing is packing those things.
Yes!
You always, I literally in my phone have a list of each costume and what goes with each costume. So when I pack, it's a checklist. I go through the list and make sure I have each piece. And I usually bring an extra costume, because even with the list, I'll still forget something. So repurposing is great, but you have to stay organized on what goes with what if you're switching costumes
So
out.
many times I've like left a wig in another bag. I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna share. And then I'm like,
I wanted to ask, out of all your costumes, like if you had to try to battle it out, trying to finish the costume, which costume probably beats you more? Like if you're battling between the costume, you and versus the costume, that gave you more frustration making.
currently, Squirrel Girl. I'm like, it's a good thing I'm not squirrels. Because these costumes are supposed to be dead to me. I'm just so frustrated. And it's the whole thing where I'm like, I'm gonna challenge myself, I'm gonna do all these crazy vids. And I'm just so frustrated. But yeah, great ass Squirrel Girl.
I think for me is probably my Fem Trooper, just because it took forever, and it was literally blood, sweat, and tears. Like my fingers were literally bleeding as I'm doing it. I sanded the skin off of my hands, and it was time crunch as usual. So right before San Diego Comic-Con, and I'd be in the shop for like 16 hours at a time, where you're just, it was like 100 degrees in there, the AC wasn't working, sweating, like crying, bleeding, and it's white too, so I'm like cleaning the blood off as I'm going.
There's always blood in every
Yeah,
costume.
blood everywhere. So yeah, it was a love-hate relationship, but the second the shin was done, or the thigh was done, and you start putting it on and it becomes something, like the beginning of it is the part that I hate, because you're so frustrated and you don't have anything to show for it yet. But the second that those pieces start coming together and you put it on, you have the belt, or you have the chest piece, it becomes something to you, and at that point, that's when you start loving it again when you were hating it before.
Yeah.
How much do you get into character whenever you're playing a character, and how do you go about doing it?
I don't
I
really.
don't.
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry. I would have trouble being myself,
Yeah.
let alone trying to like. I mean, when
I think with your posing.
yeah,
photos
you'll
more
practice
so.
poses and be like, oh, I should be smiling, I should be smiling. I just usually look at reference. I should practice poses in here. I do not. I should.
I always say that to people. I always practice like 3 poses before you attend a convention, so that you know you have 3. Because photographers, if you do a shoot or something, they're gonna be like, oh, switch it up, new
I
pose,
only know this one.
and you're like, oh no. What do I do next?
I can't think of a question.
Yes.
I got a question.
Over here, right?
Right there. I saw you raise your hand. Don't be shy. That's always a hard question, because it's like picking your favorite cat, or your favorite squirrel.
Your favorite child.
For me, I'm going Stormtrooper. I put that thing on and I'm like, I'm a badass. I just feel so cool. So Stormtrooper. all the way.
Yeah, I have to say probably Snow White for me, just because I feel like
I just did an R222, which is R2D2, which is coming out tomorrow. First time.
But I always find it's like the newest one or the one
Yeah.
you're working on. We always say that like you have to be psyched about the one you're working on, otherwise you will just be like, I'm done. Nope.
What's one of the most intimidating costumes you've done?
I think everything's intimidating at the beginning, until you kind of have a plan. For me, every time I start something, I kind of have that moment where I'm like, okay, I guess we're gonna go. And then if it weren't for the internet and friends and YouTube, I would be like crying in the corner right now.
make sure it was something I was proud of. So, because I was like, I gotta practice what I preach. I can't go into something I'm not proud of.
Yeah.
So,
You have a question, friend.
Oh, thank you. You really have the most adorable
yes,
voice ever.
she does. The cute voice. Probably non-stretch stuff.
Yeah,
With a
or
lot of
not
texture.
stretch and not fur. Because I, for some reason, end up doing things that are furry a lot, and I don't understand because I hate it, but I still do it. Because
I don't use any warbler or thermoplastics. I tend to, because originally when I was taught, I apprenticed under a fine art mold maker for a few years, so I learned the whole like sculpting out of clay or on something and put clay on top of that, or take a mold of something, then you have your mold, and then you cast out, and then usually fiberglass. So it's really cheap, really forgiving. You can sand it, smooth it out, and then you can paint it. So
I know people say go to Warble a lot, but I know Sentra is like really great.
I mean, Warbler does have downfalls. Warbler has a texture. Warbler's really heavy. Warbler's really expensive if you want to do other things.
Yeah, and you also can't wear it in hot places, and I think
Yeah.
people forget that.
It will melt.
It will melt.
And then if you don't, like, you can sandwich Warbler and a piece of grapple, then you're getting stuff super thick.
Yeah,
And then it's
which
getting
makes it
even
really
heavier.
Yeah.
I just did a Princess Peach battle armor of Warbler, and it cost like $300.
And that's just for the work.
Just for the Warbler.
Yeah, that's not including paint.
And then Warbler does have some curves it can't do. So what I've done in some instances is I've created like a, Warbler's great for templating. So I had like a flat shape, and then I sculpted on top of the Warbler, and I took a mold of that. Or if you make something a Warbler and you need multiples of it, don't just do, because fiberglass is super, I'm not saying it's the end all be all. You gotta wear a mask, it's a little not safe, but
You can die.
so use fiberglass, everybody. But it is knowing what material, and that's what comes with experience. Is you start using materials, and then you're like, oh, this material is great for this. This material is great for this. Warbler would be great for that.
Trial and error for sure. I mean, I think I've learned most of the things that I know from screwing something up.
You learn more from your mistakes than your
Yeah.
successes.
Yeah, for sure.
Questions? I thought there was some in the back on this side. Yes?
Do you have any problems with cosplay?
Any problems?
I would laugh like you're talking about like cosplay bad experience, like an accident.
Yeah, some stuff like that, or like if you slept with your contacts or something like
Oh,
that.
I actually, I don't really think it has anything to do with cosplay, but on the flight yesterday, I always fall asleep with my contacts, and I'm terrible, and I just get lazy. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna close my eyes for a minute. And I woke up because I could hear them saying we're almost leaving, and I looked over at my husband, and I thought something's wrong. And I opened my eye, and the contact had folded in half and stuck to like the top of my eyebrow.
So gross.
I didn't have eye drops, so we couldn't get it off. So he's like trying to guide my finger to get it off, and then it fell out, and I'm like trying to find the contacts. Like I'm really blind, like legally blind without my contacts. Since I was like with one eye trying to find it. So yeah, things like that happen all the time, and in my normal life as well.
Latex clothing, and I'll keep this PG. Latex clothing you glue together, you don't sew it, right? So imagine you're gluing two pieces together. Well, I was doing these really cool poses, it was really hot, and the glue started to reheat up and stopped being glued in my crotch. And I didn't want any seam lines, so I wasn't wearing any underwear.
And you're like, oh, something's wrong.
Yeah,
There's a breeze.
and it was at a con, so I was doing like this crouching pose. Luckily, no one got any photos, but so now I wear like 4 pairs of underwear. So
Just layers.
Yeah, just layers, like 4 pairs of underwear, like pasties.
Why is it so bulky?
Exactly. It's like a diaper. It's a diaper.
It just actually just depends on your costume.
So yes,
Then you don't
moral of the
feel
story: always wear underwear.
Yeah.
Yes, again.
It's a life lesson.
Yeah, then you'll be next.
How do you decide which characters you want to create costumes for?
I
I think it depends. I mean, for me, I have to pick something that I like, love to death, because if not, that moment when you're like, this sucks, I don't want to do this anymore, it's so much easier to just let it go. So for me, I pick stuff that like I grew up with, things that mean something to me, and a lot of the times for me, I have a list of things that I want to do, but some of the costumes that like I'm really proud of have been ones where I'm like driving home and I'm like, I pops into my mind. So yeah, sometimes it's that, sometimes it's things that I've seen, a movie that I've seen that kind of triggers something else. But yeah, there's no real process for me, it's just kind of whatever is going on up here.
Yeah, that's totally. I mean, sometimes you're like, hey, buddies, let's do a costume
Or yeah,
together.
groups, yeah.
But then my word of advice with that is always pick a costume that you'd be okay wearing alone. Because a lot of times you're like up alone.
Yeah.
Because your friends would be like, I'm out, peace, and you're like,
Or I
I still
didn't finish, or,
want to wear this.
yeah.
Like, so I learned that the hard way many times. But yeah, I mean, I try to keep a list. I'm like, this one, then this one, then this one. And sometimes you're like, I feel like making that one.
You got a question here?
It's actually kind of a two-part question. Do you make a costume for every con you go to? And the second part is, do you ever reuse your costumes, or how often do you reuse your costumes?
For the first part, no. I used the same thing, I think I used to try to debut
When I did
something
one
new.
con a year,
Yeah.
I was like, I got this. Because I lived in Canada and I couldn't go anywhere.
But when you,
It
like,
took me 16 hours to get here.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
well, back when I was in there, all we had was Anime North and Fan Expo.
Yeah.
And that was it. So I was always going to Otakon. I was like, I'm going to Otakon once a year. And now that I go to more cons, no. I reuse so many costumes. And that comes from also craftsmanship. I used to make costumes like, if it makes it through the whole day, I will be impressed. And now I'm like, no, I'm gonna actually, if I spend like an extra couple hours and actually make the effort to make it last and stay good, you're already investing so much money into it and time. Just have it stay together. So, and then
And I think people,
you like re-wearing stuff.
yeah, people like seeing certain costumes. You know, people will request, like, hey, we really want to see you in this costume. So in that case, and some of the stuff you, I mean, me personally, I know you, the same for you, and for you, Karli, as well. You put so much time and effort into something. If I knew that I had to make this whole thing and it was going to take me 3 weeks and I was only going to wear it once, I don't think I would be as excited to do it. You know, there's absolutely no way. So I definitely reuse costumes a lot, and doing more cons you kind of have to, but then try to sprinkle in a new one here and there, debut ones for when you can get it done in time.
Anyone else? Any questions? Yeah.
I have to ask, is it better to build a wig or dye a wig if you had to do it?
When you say build, what do you mean?
As in like buying the right color strands and placing them, or is it better to dye it?
The only time, I mean, it's better to buy it. I mean, now wigs there's so many colors.
Yeah.
It's really easy, like, again, in way back, not quite the golden age of cosplay, but like late 90s, there was like one company and everything came in brown, black, and that was it. So there was Sharpie dyeing, and the Sharpie dyeing evolved into spray bottles, and then that evolved into a Sharpie bath, and that evolved into cosplay wig companies.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many resources now. I know for one of my costumes, like, oh, I need a wig. I literally went on Amazon, found it, and had it the next day.
Yeah.
There's so many different tools, and even in Amazon, you can get decent wigs for like $12 to $15.
The only time I would recommend like working on a wig besides styling and sewing in extra wefts is you find a really great wig but you need it to be lace front. You can do what's called venting your wig, which is basically you make a lace front wig and you tie the hairs into the wig to give it a more natural look. Like that's about the most hardcore, I think.
So modifying.
Yeah, you're not doing it. I mean, some people like to make their own wigs from scratch, but it comes to a point like, okay, do I spend 10 hours on a wig, or do I spend $30 and 10 hours on something else in the costume?
I have a question for you guys. Where do you store and how do you store all your costumes?
So I have closets full. I get the bins, like the Rubbermaid bins, and I kind of try to put stuff in there, like the cosplay shoes are all in one. But I got rolling racks from Walmart. I think they were like $49 in the garage. So I have 2 of those full. I have a closet full, and the garage is just full of like bins. So not very well.
Because I know some people, they will put their costume in one garment bag. They'll put every single piece into it. So if they need a costume, it's there.
I kind of do that a little bit, but then with the whole repurposing,
Also, you get if things are too heavy, you know, like if you have
Yeah, you
boots,
can't
you
hang
can't
it
put
on
that in a
there.
garment bag, or you have armor, it goes in a Tupperware container.
yeah.
So, and then some costumes you can't hang because, like, if the fabric's hanging, it'll actually like stretch.
Yeah.
So, like my Snow White skirt, I can't hang it. My Princess Leia, I can't hang it, so I have to like pack it up neatly
no idea. But again, I have 2 rolling garment racks in the garage, a closet full in the house, and like bins a lot, but I've never actually really counted.
You forget like the ones that you started with. Like,
Yeah, I have those, but it's like I don't have that. Like there's like so many years of clothing I would never wear. But what is it? I think I stopped counting at like 70 or 80, like 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, I don't count. I think I have more costumes than regular clothing. I
Oh,
definitely
yeah, me
spend
too.
way more on costumes
Yeah.
than people.
My normal closet's like of clothes is like this big, and like maybe a few drawers, and the costumes
Yeah.
is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I have like a big, for me, I live in a warehouse loft, so it's got 30-foot high ceiling, so it's big work shelves and kind of turned into a closet and shelves.
sorry, any other questions?
For beginning beginners that don't exactly know what question to ask, resources are out there. Where would you suggest going to? I mean, tutorials and how what to use those for and how those work together.
Yeah, so what's your creative process? Like, how do you go into a costume? What's the first thing that you do after you have the idea? Drawing on it?
People are finding out about that.
It's a lot easier now, definitely, again, from when I started. Like, go look on YouTube. Like, if you're like, I want to make Assassin's Creed outfit, go, how do you make Assassin's Creed outfit? And
Chances
it'll
are
probably
someone's made
pop
it.
up.
Yeah.
For me, I actually draw a lot of inspiration from fashion and history. So if the outfit took place at a certain point, I try to see what inspiration they drew from, what fabrics were available at that time, what fasteners were available at that time. Like obviously not Velcro.
Yeah.
So I tried not to use Velcro. But that's the way I cosplay. That's not for everybody. I try to translate something into what could possibly exist in the real world, hopefully somewhat successfully. But it does help though if you're like, okay, this took place in the American Revolution. Here's what they look like. Here's the fabrics that they use. So I need to go find that stuff. So you try to figure out what the artist was looking at. There's places like the RPF is really probably the prop forum. You'll see a lot of really amazing, talented people there. Everybody's pretty helpful. That's great for props. There's not really something you can pursue.
No, I don't. But I mean, anything like you're saying, if you just say if you're making a particular type of skirt, you go on the internet, you type that in, there will be a YouTube video. Chances are someone has made it before.
And
before you.
that's definitely like one of the tricky things about cosplay is learning the proper names for the things that you're looking for.
Yeah.
For instance, I do Mary Marvel. At a certain length, a cape is no longer called a cape, it's called a flag. It gets shorter. It's called a flag. So then it's looking up, okay, what's this called? Okay, now that I know that that's called that,
You can search for the right thing.
yeah, you can search. It's knowing those key terms. Like honestly, like that is so important. Like just the search engines putting the right, and then just deciphering what you need. It's so crazy. It makes things so much easier once you have that just exact word that you.
That is true, because I struggle with that a lot of the times. I'm sitting there and I'm searching and searching and searching, and I don't know what I'm searching for, so you're like trying to find things that are similar to that, and then usually by chance something pops up, and you're like, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah, but it's like, is it a fastener? Is it a buckle? Is it a cobra clip? Is it a this? Is it a that? And you're like, it's just, you'll spend hours researching. So having all the research and breaking it down before you even start is definitely
So we're probably going to wrap up in the next few minutes, so if there's any last questions, that would be the time to do it now. Yeah. That's why we're out here.
With cosplay pretty much evolving and changing so much from lighting up to, parts moving, how has that affected y'all professionally?
I feel like it makes me seem really crappy. Other people, like when you were saying earlier, someone will come up and say like, oh wow, I really look up to you, and then they click the button and the wings open, and I'm like, oh god. I need to go home and step up my game. I think it's actually really incredible that it has evolved to that point, and that people are having an opportunity to show off skills they may have not ever, like someone that is like, oh, I'm actually a lawyer in real life, and they show up at a costume contest and have this incredible costume. I think it's awesome that there's an outlet for people to get out the creative side, and I love every minute of it. So yeah, I am kind of intimidated by those people, which is, I think it's cool. I dig it.
It's inspiring in a good way. It's like, oh, I can do that, or I need to do that. I always say too, like something I've recently talked about, just sort of touching on that, is if you do look at another you see a comic book artist, probably the comic book artists you like are the ones that have their own style.
Yeah.
If you see a comic book that's just aping someone else's style, you're like, well, I can just go to the original source, and this guy's just copying that guy, so he's not doing his own thing. Cosplay is about your own interpretation of the costume, so do your own thing. Like, just don't. I just don't encourage you to look at other cosplayers and just copy them exactly, because it's your own. You love the character, show what you love about the character and how you love the character. So that's just. But if you do draw heavily of somebody, give them a shout out, because I know it makes me feel good when someone's like, I really liked Riddle's Snow White, and I drew inspiration from it. I'm like, oh.
And that's a really good. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone really say that before. I think that it's a thing that happens often, and I think it kind of creates a little bit of drama. But if all you do is say like, oh, you know, I really love Riddle's, you know, this outfit, it squashes any kind of drama that could arise from
It's good feels
it.
all around, because I mean, I can look at I did the Wasp years ago, and I can look at when someone else does the Wasp, and I mean very specific choices, like odd choices. And when I see someone else do that, I was like, well, it's really unusual for them to also make that choice, but.
Because you know that it was.
Yeah,
a
and I
different
was just
thing.
like, oh, you know, like, it's still really cool, and I'm still really glad they did the Wasp, but, you know, it's like, and you just wonder, like, did they not? And I don't know. But I always, and same with artists, like, if I do a picture based on a piece of artwork, I'll be like,
Inspired by.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with, like I said, it's a good feeling to feel like you inspire somebody, so I'm always like, I was inspired by this, but now I sound super petty. Yay!
All right, we have time for one more question if there's anybody else out there.
No pressure.
Oh, now everybody wants that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can do.
Are there costumes that you really want to make, but some aspect of it has been a little bit too daunting or whatever, so you avoided
Yes.
making?
I think there's like the giant list of costumes that I have that I'm like, oh, am I ready? No,
I
I
don't
don't
have
have
the list
time.
away.
Yeah. I don't know if I can name one in particular, but I probably have a list of like 30 to 50 in my dream world, and I'm like, oh, I want to do all of those. But either above my skill level, time, or you know, money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine is, oh god.
Do they share like similar aspects? Like, is there an aspect of making a costume that you think might be too, like, what aspect of making a costume is too daunting?
I think armor for me. Armor and like helmets scare the crap out of me.
Yeah. If you're gonna make a good helmet, you need a head cast.
Yeah.
I
tried
you need a
making
3D scan your head, like one or the other.
Yeah.
Mine is an anime called Bone Crisis. Anybody know? Yeah, Chris's heart suit. I've wanted to do it since I started cosplay, and problem with that, it's all armor. I want to make it look more realistic, but also what happens is I need to take body cast, and since there'll be almost no give, I have to keep that weight and size until the costume is done. And then, otherwise it might not fit right, it might get uncomfortable, and then it's all the engineering. Like, yeah, you can look at something in 2D, be like, oh yeah, that's cool, and then you're like, try to translate into 3D, you're like, that makes no sense.
I think that's the case with a lot of costumes.
Yeah.
Is you see something, whether it's like a comic book or even sometimes movies. It's not like, I guess movies is more real life, but comic book or any artwork, they're not real. You know, you can draw something amazing on in this comic, and then trying to make that on a body. Or for me, I do a lot of male characters, so to put a male character on a female form causes a little bit of issue in certain areas.
Yeah, it
of the
gets
body.
sexier.
And then we have another question over here on the side.
How do you feel about even like in the community as well, bullying, whether it's size, gender, or just general knowledge and ability to make a costume?
I think it sucks. I think that what we are doing, everyone, to me, this is like a safe place. Like when you go to cons, we're all here because we love this stuff. We love it. And for anyone to come in and kind of like bully and pick on people, I think you just tell me and I'll karate chop them. I just think there's no place for that. There's really no need. No matter where you go, there's always going to be bullying. There's always going to be people that pick on other people. And the main thing is just to kind of stand up for yourself and don't let people get away with it. And I think that's the reason people will come and say something and no one says anything back. Like, don't play the victim. If someone says something you don't like, say, hey man, that's not cool. Like, get out of here. Like, what are you trying to get? And tell someone. I mean, if someone's being harassed, tell security. Get them kicked out. There's no place for that here.
And then they're like, oh.
You're like, oh, okay.
It's like my way, it's just my defense mechanism. I've always had it since I was a kid. I just make jokes. And I just try to like weird them out, and they're just like, I don't know how to deal with this. You know, like, and most of the time they're like, oh, ha 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 ha. And I never hear from them again. They either leave because they know I'm gonna just troll them again and make them look like an idiot in front of everybody, or they know it doesn't bother me because I'm not like, that hurt my, you know. But she's right. If it's at a con, like interviews, there's been a lot of issues with people doing inappropriate interviews. You need to draw attention to that. That is important. And just have like a buddy system. Like it's okay to tell somebody, like a friend, like, oh, this person really, like I tell my husband all the time, I was like, oh, this person said something mean, and it just hits you sometimes at just a certain day, or you're looking in the mirror, you're like, man, my nose is really big today, and someone's like, your nose is huge, and I'm like, right, my nose does look huge, and just talk to somebody about it. Like don't let it fester inside of you. Just get it out. And I'm very much an advocate of just kind of bombard myself, and then eventually I just kind of get numb and laugh it off.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of things with humor, and I feel like especially in interviews that's always really hard because you're on the spot and they're recording you. So the way you act is on camera, and chances are they're not going to delete it if you do anything, you know. So just kind of being able to be prepared for that, almost like prepare for the worst, and when it doesn't go bad, then everything's great. But yeah, just stand up for yourself, and especially if you're saying on the internet. I mean, everyone gets haters on the internet, it just happens. I try to deal with everything with like making jokes, or I post a meme of me making like the turtle face video, and they're like, oh, I don't know what to say.
Just don't, I guess like the best thing is don't waste your time fighting with them.
Yeah.
Like either if you don't want to deal with it, just delete it. Or just make a joke back. Don't waste your time with them. They're time vampires, like essentially. You could be like, I could be making a costume or doing whatever I love, and instead I'm wasting time with this horrible person who's just making me hate people.
And the thing with the internet too is I know it's, especially for fan pages, it's your page. You have control over what you put on your page, what is said on your page. For me, my page is a positive place, so if someone's going to come and be super negative, I don't want you there. You're not allowed there. You're not allowed to tear me apart or my friends. If I post something and someone says anything about any of my friends, you are banned and deleted. You're not. That's not the place for that. And it should be a positive environment, so if you have that mentality, don't feel bad about deleting comments and banning people that are inappropriate.
It's your slumber party.
Yeah. You can invite whoever you want.
It's your circus, it's your home.
We had another question right here. Question choice. There you go.
How did you transition from doing cosplay for fun to becoming a professional cosplayer? And what does the term professional cosplayer mean in terms of like, do you do this as a job? Is this a source of income for you and fun, or sort of that kind of area of professional cosplay? How does that transition from fun to I do this because people want me type of thing?
I think fun has led it to being a job. And for me, when people say professional, I kind of like, oh, because I cringe at that word.
I think there's professional professional quality costumes,
Right.
but there's very few people who make sole living, like no other sources of revenue. Off of cosplay. Like either they're like you have YouTube and like, you know, it's a lot of work. You can do a lot of stuff for make more money for less cost.
Yeah, I think for like a handful of us, I think for me personally, it was a timing thing. I was in the right place at the right time. I was doing when kind of the cosplay boom happened, and that's what kind of led me onto this path. But I do so many other things, and I think cosplay has actually given me more opportunities to get other jobs. So I can't say that I solely make my living off of this. No, I'm sorry, it's a lie. Yeah, and I don't think that really any of the girls can really say that, because some people will say that, but they don't realize that, yeah, we've gotten jobs to do other things, or hosting, or, you know.
Or their husbands are working regular jobs, which
That's
allow them
help
to free
support.
them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing for her. Like, because of cosplay, I've gotten to like, I'm really proud, gotten to work on a few movies. I just got off working on Captain America Civil War as a costumer. You know, like I was very bottom of the barrel. That week I just did on these costumes are way, way above. But because of cosplay, I have an understanding and I know how to do it, and that's what got my foot in the door to work on films. So, and that's my end goal. Like, a lot of questions we get, and I hope I don't squash anybody's dreams, but there's how do I become cos famous? And that makes me cringe a bit because cosplay should just really be a stepping stone towards something else. I mean, you can make a career out of it, good for you. That's absolutely fantastic.
But it's not a lasting career.
It's not, you
Yeah.
need to have a backup plan, you know, like either needs to be like, I'm doing cosplay because I want to be a special effects makeup person. I'm doing cosplay because I really love makeup and I want to be a makeup person or sell makeup or design makeup or I want to be a fashion designer or I want to do whatever, you know, it's
the root of like a problem, because if that's your goal, you should be doing it because you love it. You should be doing it because you like creating the costumes and you like going to cons and you like being with the people. But if your goal is
to be famous, like that's the thing. Like I think almost all the successful cosplayers I know did it or started or do it because they love it. And if you don't do it, people are gonna know, and they're not gonna want to follow you, and they're gonna be like, she is a miserable person. She's just doing this to make money or to whatever. It's like I can tell that I need somebody, and they're just unhappy doing it. And again, that's not what cosplay is about. The end goal is to make yourself happy. So if you're not happy doing it, just go find another hobby or dial this back so it's not a career. I think that's why I wouldn't want to do it. And I mean, we could get into the whole. It's more than just like going to cons and.
oh yeah, there's the whole like it's ultimately it's a business. There's the whole back end of it. There's obviously creating the costumes, but most of us have online stores. I mean, and that's supporting our living, but it's not necessarily.
Because you gotta buy tools.
Yeah,
Imagine you gotta buy sewing machines and fabrics and.
And it's very expensive. It's a very expensive hobby to have. So.
Makeup.
Like you guys were saying, even the online presence, the marketing and the Facebook and
Social media is a full-time job. Full-time.
Post-production on photos,
See this,
digital
I've said
editing.
this a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've probably seen
If you don't, you have to post every day
Yeah.
You should, yeah.
on either platform.
Super lazy. But yeah, I mean, that's a whole other panel, and that's a learning curve. Like this is, I understand too. Like cosplay is, it's finding itself. Like there are some girls, like cosplayers I used to, like pioneers who really allowed cons to take cosplay seriously. Like way back when masquerades were judged by voice actors and who didn't know anything about costuming and all there was the costume contest or no like. Let's go do a photo shoot. Let's have a hall costume. There's nothing like that. And so cosplayers got upset. They're like, why am I working so hard on this outfit to be judged by someone who knows nothing about how to make this outfit?
Yeah.
And so it's, I don't know where I was going with that.
Doing accurate
Yeah.
recreation costumes, and you lose to the person who's doing the hard work.
Yeah.
You've gone out of your way to,
But-
really research.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that goes back to like costume contests. I don't protect. Before I did Heroes of Cosplay, I did a couple contests. I won, I lost. It just wasn't my thing. I just didn't like losing a whole day. I didn't like going and then being judged by people who really either didn't know what they were doing.
They're not qualified to judge you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not
Or-
saying it in a bad, like a not.
Yeah,
People have their own people.
or they wouldn't even come up close and look at it. They're just like,
Yeah.
that's big, you go.
Or that's
You win.
shiny, that's got lights. They want
Yeah, so, and then I've also been on the reverse where I had a girl come up to me and she started crying about not winning a costume contest 2 years ago that I judged. And I was like, it took me a while to get it out of her, like, what's wrong? And she's like, I just worked really hard and blah, 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 blah. And then I remembered she had bought a lot of it, and the girl who won had made it, and the comment was very like, people who make it, you know, blah. And I said, look, I don't mean to undermine myself, but did you like your costume? And she's like, yes. I'm like, were you proud of it? She's like, yes. I'm like, then who gives a fuck what I, oh, sorry. I'm so sorry, cupcakes. Who gives a cupcake what I think about your costume? That leads back to like, don't let a judge, I'm so sorry. Don't let a judge or someone like take away you being proud of something. And sometimes I think people invest too much into winning the contest.
Yeah.
That they're like, if I don't win, I'm a failure. It's like,
for me is like one of the hardest things because
I feel
it's like
super guilty.
everybody wins. Can I get some more prizes? Like you win and you win and you win.
You're
It's
like Oprah, man.
yeah, everybody wins. Everybody gets a vacation to Hawaii.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it just brings back to cosplay. Cosplay is fun and that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
It's
well,
supposed to
yeah.
make you feel good about yourself, and in the end, you're supposed to be proud of what you do.
And that's why it's a great hobby.
All right. Do we have one last question before we end?